but a brighter start certainly across much of England and Wales. Much sunnier conditions compared to Wednesday morning, and a dry day to come for most. But one or two showers will develop across Wales and the southwest, northern England as well. Most of the showers, however, will continue to affect northern and western Scotland and Northern Ireland. 13 to 14 Celsius here, 17 to 20 for parts of England and Wales, with the sunny spells feeling pleasantly warm. But there will be a bit of a breeze, especially in the north, and that will carry further rain or showers into Scotland, northern England, as well as Northern Ireland during the evening on Thursday. Increasingly, those showers becoming confined, however, by the start of Friday, north of the central belt. Mild start to Friday. In places it will be 10 to 12 degrees. A bright start in the south. The further north you are, the cloudier it will be, the breezier it will be. But I think actually for much of England and Wales it's a dry day. And for much of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's also fine but cloudy and breezy. The rain largely affecting northern and western Scotland. And even here it dries up and brightens up on Saturday and into Sunday. Plenty of warm sunshine developing.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, should the Queen get to keep the perks of being a royal when she cannot fulfil her duties? Daily Mirror associate editor Kevin Maguire, who made that controversial suggestion, will battle with me in the clash. One of the latest big victims of cancel culture, footballer Matt Le Tissier, joins me after being deplatformed by the sport that he loves over his vaccine views. Plus, it's a night of unfiltered opinion with US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly and columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddell. Plus, I'll be joined by my superstar panel too, columnist Amanda Patel, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and broadcaster Ashley James. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome along. GB News is live on your telly and on your wireless and on your teas made, but you need the premium promo code for that. On tonight's edition of the Mark Steyn Show, well, AstraZeneca won't reply to our emails. Sajid Javid is giving us the bums rush. Lord Grade of Ofcom is a no-show. Nadine Dorris is shampooing the cat. So who have we got? Have we got anyone to talk to here? Why, yes, we do. Citizens of the United Kingdom who did as the quote-unquote experts told them to do and are now totally screwed. A lot of other things on life support these days: free speech, economic prosperity, women's rights. We'll get to all of them. Plus, the one thing we can never get enough of, your questions and comments. Send them along, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at GBNews. Feel free to be as vicious as you like about me. All that coming up after Miranda Shunker with the latest news.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has signed historic security agreements with Finland and Sweden, vowing the countries will assist each other against any military attack. The declarations will intensify intelligence sharing, joint military training and bolster security. Finland and Sweden are considering joining NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, despite threats from the Russian president. Well, speaking at a joint news conference in Finland, Boris Johnson said the war has changed the equation of European security.
We've seen the end of the post-Cold War period, and the invasion of Ukraine, sadly, has opened a new chapter. And it would be fair to say that it has also brought Finland and the UK even closer together today. So the security declaration, the solemn declaration we've signed today, ensures that our two nations can intensify our partnership and take it to unparalleled heights.
Former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith says Russia's aggression has made countries rethink their approach to security.
The one thing about this Ukraine crisis is it's reminded a very complacent free world that these freedoms are not free. They have to be, and you have to prepare to fight for them. And what we've done is we've dealt, I think, too long. We've dealt with the world as we wish it would be, not prepared to deal with the world as it is.
Ukraine says negotiations are underway to swap Russian prisoners of war for badly injured defenders in the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. It comes as Ukrainian forces continue their counter-offensive in the Kharkiv region. New footage appears to show a Russian tank being destroyed. UK military intelligence says Ukraine has successfully struck Russian air defences and supply lines with drones. Police are hunting for two men after they tried to kidnap a toddler in the Hampshire town of Ringwood this morning. It took place as a woman was walking her dog with her 2-year-old daughter. The suspects, described as white and in their late 30s, grabbed the child and ran off. The girl was only released when the dog was chased and bit one of the men on the leg. The Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall have hosted the first royal garden party at Buckingham Palace since 2019. The Queen was not in attendance due to her ongoing mobility issues, but Charles and Camilla spoke to a selection of the 8,000 guests in attendance. Garden parties have not been held at the palace for 3 years due to the pandemic. Well, on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Steyn.
Hey, I'm often asked about the stories we don't cover on this show, like Beergate or Vindaloo-gate or whatever they're calling it. I'm not generally a conspiracy theorist, but we have a situation where the groupthink media are obsessed with Boris Johnson's cake for the first 3 months of the year, and then with Keir Starmer's curry for the next 3 months. And as the world goes to hell, hundreds of migrants land on the south coast each day. Inflation is the worst in half a century. No sick person has had a face-to-face meeting with his GP in 2 years. Oh, no. More cake and let's wash it down with a chicken masala. And so we can't see the forest for the Black Forest Gatto. The forest is this. The entire political class, government and opposition, knew that the regime they imposed on the rest of us was rubbish, was ludicrous, was not worth paying attention to. Where are the dead and injured from the Downing Street party and the Northern knees-up? There aren't any, because there was no risk whatsoever from communal cake or curry. Brendan O'Neill, who was on with Dan the other night, has cut to the chase. Both of these guys should stand up in the House of Commons and say that all lockdown fines should be refunded. There was no justification for these rules. The only interesting point about Cakegate and Currygate is that the contempt for you is bipartisan. Both government and opposition know the whole thing was a crock, but they did it to you anyway. They should put it on the ballot. Party of cake versus party of curry. As I've said, my priority is that the last 2 years must never happen again. Sweden didn't lock down, and Sweden had no excess mortality at all under the age of 75. Every Swede had curry, every Swede had cake, every Swede had curry cake. It's a chocolate sponge with vindaloo filling, glazed with rice drizzled in chutney and poppadom sprinkles. Every Swede under 75 had a normal life. So demand a nationwide refund of the lockdown fines and quit wasting your life yakking about curry and cake. We need less media groupthink, a lot less. Instead, the online harms bill will give us more. 6 days ago, I interviewed two ladies, Vicky Spitt and Charlotte Wright, widowed by a vaccine that their husbands never had any need to take. And since then, I've been besieged by all kinds of people who said, gee, I thought it was just me, because you never hear about it in the media. Charlotte was so moved by the avalanche of responses from her fellow bereaved that she tweeted, I often feel as though I could have helped protect some of the loved ones of those within our group, VIB UK 1. That's Vaccine Injured and Bereaved UK. Within our group, the ones that passed so many months after Stephen, had I been allowed to speak out. It breaks my heart further. Allowed to speak out. The media groupthink meant that only the official narrative was heard, and when GBNews decided to break from the groupthink, the pseudo-butch boys at Talk Radio decided to scoff publicly at Charlotte, as if she's making up her widowhood just to get on telly. We need an end to the groupthink, not just on COVID, but on climate change, mass immigration, and any number of other issues. Instead, Nadine Dorris's online harms bill will make the groupthink worse and will tie up dissenting voices in time-wasting appeals of censorship, as our friends at the Conservative Woman website are currently tied up thanks to the commissars of the BBFC, the British Board of Film Censors. A century ago, Ring Lardner, the great American short story writer, summed it up in 4 words. Shut up, he explained. That's the online harms bill. Shut up, he explained. That's the British Board of Film Censors to the Conservative Woman. Shut up, he explained. That's Talk Radio to the vaccine widows. Shut up, he explained. Last night, Dan Wootton interviewed Alex Mitchell, who got the vaccine and had to have his leg amputated. And when he posted his interview with Dan on social media, they labelled it and suppressed it with what they call a footer. That's the announcement at the bottom. He's lost his foot to AstraZeneca, but they still give him a footer to tell the world he's just faking his footlessness. Shut up, they explained. Jules Sirkin, who was on this show last night, tweeted, quote, the censored footer we keep seeing on our true and personal experience and evidence by Facebook comes from a rather sinister group called Full Fact, which is based in London but funded by American dollars. Is this fair? Always the money talking, never the person. That's very true. Always the money talking, never the person. Full Fact is funded by American bazillionaires who use their self-proclaimed status as fact-checkers. Fact-checkers, what a joke that is. Did they send someone round to fact-check how many legs Alex Mitchell actually has? It's just a cover for the crushing of dissent. Shut up, they explained. Shut up, says Full Fact. American sugar daddies crushing free speech in the UK. And by the way, Ofcom, which regulates this show and all other British broadcasting, partners with Full Fact. Why? These are people who on one side, you're supposed to be a government agency. So why do you take a side? Why do you take... Oh, by the way, could you stop talking in my ear, control room? Stop it. The big shut-up is upon us. From organisations like Ofcom, Full Fact, and all kinds of others. And we need to burst free of this thing and not have this groupthink has killed people. Let me know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk is our email address. Here's another wrinkle for you. Do you remember the NHS? They were big a couple of years ago. Used to do these videos on Twitter of nurses dancing through the corridors of hospitals, and we all used to go out on our doorsteps and bang our saucepans. Such grateful for such high-quality video entertainment in the midst of lockdown. I haven't heard much from the NHS in recent months, and I assume they'd all retired to the Bahamas or St. Kitts. But at least it's free, right? Not if you're clobbered by the COVID vaccine. I'm joined by Martin Brighty. Martin, it's great to see you. You had a severe adverse reaction to the vaccine, and then just to make things worse, you found out that you basically had to pay for all the costs of that yourself.
Yeah, good evening, Mark. Thank you for inviting me, firstly. That's right. It was very difficult to get a diagnosis. And in the end, in absolute sheer desperation, I was able to find a private doctor and secured an appointment with her. And as soon as she saw me, she just referred me right back to the NHS as an emergency case. And that was 3 months after I'd first appeared at my local hospital with the side effects.
And you've spent thousands and thousands of... You're a UK taxpayer, you've paid for the NHS, and then suddenly you need it, and instead you find yourself having to pay thousands and thousands of pounds yourself for what you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I'm not the only one, though. I'm pretty certain of that. At the time, the hospitals were very busy, as you know, with COVID cases and the like, and you know, trying to get your point over to explain what's wrong with you when you're not certain what's wrong yourself, but you're fundamentally sure because of the pain that you're in and the problems that you have with your eyesight and things like that and falls. In the end, you just want somebody who's going to listen to you. And if the only way you can get that is to pay for them, then, you know, I don't see how I had any choice at the end of the day. And I'm glad I did what I did.
Now, you actually started falling, quite serious falls, because you wound up breaking all your teeth and everything. And so we want to be fair to the NHS. The NHS did actually provide you with a walking stick. Is that correct?
Yeah, I brought it along with me today, which I'm quite proud of it. I'm pleased. I'm lucky that I've got it, in actual fact. So the one that I had before, I bought from a second-hand shop, because I was just too concerned.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I was too concerned.
That's a fantastic thing, though. You've been a British taxpayer all your life. You paid for the NHS in your taxes, and although they couldn't do anything, they gave you this vaccine. The vaccine has wrecked your life, but at least they gave you that walking stick.
Yeah, I got the walking stick. Must have been end of February, so that's about 9 or 10 months after my vaccine.
Marvellous. Absolutely terrific service. How do you feel about this? Because basically the DVLA took away your driving licence, so you can't drive. You've had severe economic impacts from this. Mm-hmm. And yet, at the same time, the state, the NHS, they're not there for you.
Well, it's, you know, obviously with the blood clot continuing on my brain and the falls that I've had, I'd be a risk driving. So I actually reported my condition to the DVLA, in October last year, and they've just got round in the last couple of weeks to actually telling me that on receipt of the medical information that had been provided by my GP, etc., that I can't drive now until I've made a recovery. You know, that I accept. It's been a huge life-changing journey for me. I'm not anti-vax, you know, I went forward when I was asked, but, you know, for social reasons. But I can't understand why, you know, you can be asked to go and take the vaccine willingly. I go, you know, I want to protect those around me. And then when something happens to people like myself, there's no one to back you up. There's no sort of system in place that will sort of throw its arms around you and say, right, you know, here's how we're going to project manage this, here's how we're going to take you forward and put you back on the road to recovery.
Well, you're a healthy middle-aged man until you had this vaccine stuck in your arm. Mm-hmm. So you had no medical need to take this virus. As you said, you did it for social reasons on the assumption, which turned out not to be true, that if you had the vaccine, you then didn't pass it to other people. As I said, we know that not to be true now. So the government basically leaned on everybody in the country from the age of 3 to 103 to get this thing. That's extremely unusual. Do you think there should be compensation for those who never needed to get it, like yourself, and then it goes horribly wrong, you can't drive, you're falling over, the NHS has got nothing to do but give you a walking stick 10 months later? Do you think the state owes it to these citizens such as yourself to come up with a proper scheme to take care of you for what essentially they told you to do?
Yeah, I think definitely they should, and they should have had something in place when they launched the vaccines to underpin it, just in case anything did actually go wrong for people. There's nothing worse than when you're diagnosed, you ask, well, who do I turn to for help? And people just say, well, I don't know. And then you look for yourself and you actually find that there's nobody there. And it's quite horrifying, really, because you realise, you know, suddenly you're on your own. You've got a vaccine-induced blood clot on your brain. And, you know, I didn't understand the condition. You know, certainly knew it was serious, but I didn't know who do you go to. So, yeah, I think there should be some form of support network, some form of compensation that's going to help people get through the hardship of it all until they, you know, whilst they're making their recovery, if they make their recovery. And of course, there's people who have died. I mean, who's going to look after their sort of families, you know, going on? Charlotte, for instance, as you said earlier, 2 small kids, you know, how's that going to happen?
No, absolutely terrible. And her, as she was telling us, her 7-year-old boy is still in shock about this. Widowed at 32. This is a terrible thing. But the point to remember, Martin, thank you very much for joining us. And the reason I'm annoyed about this is it's a foreseeable consequence. If you have a vaccine that you're going to jab into the arms of all 67 million of your citizens, this isn't an unforeseen consequence. If you stick the thing in everybody, there's going to be adverse consequences. And the fact that the NHS is too busy dancing through the corridors with their stupid COVID videos to actually be ready for this reflects very, very badly on them. Thank you very much for joining us, Martin. Sajid Javid declined our invitation. Thank you, and good luck to you. And hold on to that NHS walking stick, because I doubt they'll be giving you a second one. Sajid Javid, who is the political head of the NHS, declined our invitation to come on the show, but he did agree to provide a written response. So we asked him a couple of questions, and he has not replied as of yet. AstraZeneca's legal team attends all the coroner's inquests on dead vaccine victims, but again, won't respond to our emails. Claire Hibbs has also been on the receiving end of AstraZeneca and joins me now. Claire, it's great to see you. Tell me about your experience with this.
Okay, so I had my first jab 31st of March 21. nearly 10 days later, I was admitted to hospital and subsequently was found to have blood clots in quite a few different places, around the liver, on the lungs. And within days, I was diagnosed with vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia, which is what Charlotte's husband and Vicky's husband died from. Luckily, very, very luckily, I survived. I was in hospital for quite a while, and we sort of managed to get through it. And but when I say luckily, it's also lucky because I'm one of the ones that was diagnosed with having something caused by the AstraZeneca, whereas there are, as Martin said, there are thousands of people that haven't been diagnosed. They're backwards and forwards from the NHS trying to get a diagnosis, but they're just being sent away. They're just being told that there's nothing wrong with them. And this is what I find shocking. This is just a really sad thing. There's a Facebook group with over 400 people now that are they're on there, all asking each other questions and trying to find out what's going on. AstraZeneca, Pfizer, none of them are giving any answers, and it's scandalous. I just feel sorry for everybody, and no one's been speaking out or helping us.
No, and what I found extraordinary, I'm not sure where this number came from, but I gather that about approximately 6 months ago, they launched this vaccine compensation scheme, the government, but no one's actually got in any money, and they tell you, well, it's going to take more than 6 months. The reason it's going to take more than 6 months, one reason, is that apparently they only have 4 people working on it.
Well, the vaccine damage payment scheme has actually been running for years, and most of us who were diagnosed actually put a claim in more or less straight away. So we're talking a year, and nearly a year ago, that we've put the claim in. Yeah. At the time, solicitors that we're with actually was looking into it and helping us, and they found that in the DWP, in that particular department, only had 4 people working on the vaccine damage payment scheme. And bearing in mind, there were hundreds of people that were starting to put their claims in. And I mean, now there's roughly, I believe, 1,200 claims that have been sent in for COVID-19 vaccines. It's now been passed over. In October, I believe it was passed over to the NHSBA, the Business Authority, and they're now employing teams of people to do medical assessments on people that have obviously been diagnosed or have these issues. But the sad thing is, a lot of this 1,200 that have put applications in, most of them haven't had diagnosis, so you need to be 60% disabled to actually get this compensation. And most of the people, including myself, are probably not going to be eligible for the compensation. I've had a year off work. I've been off sick for a whole year, and I've not been able to work, but I'm not going to be eligible, as well as thousands of others, for any of this compensation.
But what I don't I take your point, Claire, but what I don't, they basically had one flop bureaucracy pass it to another flop bureaucracy to handle. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, when you're mandating a vaccine for everybody, and actually when you're saying you need the vaccine to keep your job, you need the vaccine to travel abroad, you need the vaccine to go to a restaurant, go to a concert, go to a West End show, whatever it is, you're basically having people medicated for non-medical reasons, and it's entirely foreseeable that that's going to work out badly for people. And so the idea that you should just have a little 4-man bureaucratic team dealing with it, I mean, some of these people are never going to see a penny, not because they're eligible or ineligible, but just because the pile is mounting higher and higher, and they do not have a serious bureaucracy dealing with it.
Well, this is the problem, and also they're not being honest. They're not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, our group in our group, one of our support groups, which includes Charlotte and Vicky and Kelly and Joe that you've had on as well, They were told back in November that all their medical records had been applied for and that they'd been received. And one of them has now received another email yesterday saying that they're still waiting for medical records. So how does it go from we've got all your medical records to 3 months, 6 months later being told we're still waiting for medical records? It's just a shambles. There isn't anything in the vaccine damage payment scheme that seems to be making sense or any help to any of us in any way. And it doesn't even look like there's an end. For the people that have lost loved ones, that have children, this is their hope. They need help, and it's just a sad state of affairs, and it's just not fit for purpose.
Well, some of us think we know why this happened, Claire, because it's a politicised response. The minute they start paying out sums of money, then by implication they have admitted some kind of guilt, and there's no end to it, and the floodgates will open. You're a perfectly healthy woman. You had no medical need to take this vaccine. Do you feel you were told to take it to save great grandma because she's 97 and a bit doddery, and to protect the little old lady down the street? Do you feel bitter at having had your life transformed by a medical intervention you never needed in the first place?
Yeah, I do. And some people don't like to admit that because we get slammed for being anti-vax. We're not. We are far from anti-vax. We had the vaccine and we were told to do the right thing. It was on the news. It was in the papers. It was on road signs, that as you drive along the motorway, get your jab, save lives. And that's what I done. That's what most of us done. And I just think we done the right thing. Now, to the government and to AstraZeneca, now you do the right thing and you help us, and we just want some justice, and we just want to be heard. We want some acknowledgement. We just want even AstraZeneca just to acknowledge. I mean, they've blocked me on Twitter because I was asking questions on Twitter, and they've actually blocked me. So
that's great.
It's just we're just all being ignored.
That's great, Claire. So AstraZeneca ruin your life, and then they block you on Twitter. And I'll say again, we've passed all these coroner's certificates we've had of people dead from AstraZeneca. We've passed on to AstraZeneca and asked for a response. They've got all these big shot legal teams, all these fancy pants QCs they're sending to the coroner's inquests. They got nobody to come on TV and defend what they did. Thank you very much, Claire. We're going to stay in touch, and we hope for the best for you. Thank you very much. We got your thoughts coming next. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, plus the one and only Alexandra Marshall. We're coming right back.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Will this vaccine damage payment scheme go down as one of the worst blunders in British history? Chris says it's an inevitable result of administering a vaccine since all medicines have side effects. The number one and number two blunders are an insane lockdown policy and furlough scheme that went on far too long. That's correct. But the vaccine, this is where you're wrong, Chris. It's not a medicine. The vaccine was essentially a way of extending the control given to governments and the special powers of the what you call correctly the insane lockdown policy. It's not a medicine if you put it in everybody. You know how it is. You fall off the garage roof and you hurt your back, so you go and get a shot of something to make your back feel okay. That's because you got a bad back. That's because you got a bit of hernia pain. That's because your arm is a bit sore. That's one thing. But in this case, it's not. It wasn't a medical procedure. Healthy people with no need of it and at no risk from the COVID were told to get this vaccine, and then when not enough of them got it, they were told, well, you're going to need it to keep your job, you're going to need it to go and get a coffee, you're going to need it to get on a train and go to the continent, you're going to need it to live. That's the evil that has been done to people like Martin and the others we've spoken to about this whole business. Martin and Claire basically had a jab that they didn't need to get. And that's true of all the people we've spoken to. It's not a medical intervention. It was a social intervention. Do you know how insane this is? We're AstraZeneca and we're Pfizer and we're Moderna and we're Johnson & Johnson and we've come up with a jab that everybody on Earth has to have, regardless. One size fits all, whether you're 2 years old, whether you're 100 years old. There's never been anything like that. And when they were asked in India to submit it to an independent regulator to look at, they pulled out of the Indian market. Lucky for India. Lucky for India. We're always pleased to see Alexandra Marshall from the Specky Down Under. Hey, Alexandra, just give me the first line of your most recent column.
If your government thinks that free speech is a threat to democracy, then you live in a dictatorship.
Yeah, it's a fantastic opening line, and you point out that it applies to countries all over the Western world, whether they are parliamentary democracies or constitutional monarchies or republics. This seems connected with the COVID, with the last 2 years. We've now got a disinformation governance board that Joe Biden has started up. We've got the online harms bill in the UK. In Oz, you have your own issues, because whatever it is, Section 17 that I've spoken about down under that constrains free speech. Why do you think they're so anxious to actually double down on this bogus concept of disinformation?
We've actually got more than that section now. We've got a whole draft of bills coming in to restrict what we say online. But why they're doing it is because of corporate risk. With vaccines, they made a massive decision to force the population to take a medication that could harm them. Now, vaccine manufacturers are one of the only producers in the world that are allowed to make a product with fatal side effects, and that's okay. They can't sell you a faulty product that kills you, but they can sell you a product with a known fatal side effect. And so as part of that, it's always been vaccines are voluntary. That's the risk that you take. That's the wager they make with you. But when the governments around the world said, no, we're going to mandate it, or we're going to make your life absolutely a miserable hell unless you agree to it, well, that took away genuine consumer choice with vaccines. And so when the complaints started pouring in, it wasn't just a threat to the billions of profits that are being made by various vaccine companies. It became a political threat to the careers of all of our politicians who pretty much legislated this harm. And what's going to happen is if they manage to prove, or if it comes out that free speech online starts pouring in all these adverse side effects and all this disgruntlement from the civilians in the West, well, then it's going to result in massive compensation cases. It's going to result in class action suits against the government. And there's not a few thousand people. There's millions of people who lost their jobs, lost their friends, lost their lives. It is an enormous political problem, not just for Australia, not just for the UK, but globally, because it was a global error. It's a huge problem. It will be bigger than tobacco fallout. It's a nightmare. And that's why they're trying to stop us from talking to each other and stop us from sharing our stories.
Yes, you make a very good point. When we were talking to Claire, she was saying there's this 60% threshold before you're eligible for any, in other words, the vaccine has got to have wrecked 60% of your body before you're eligible for compensation. That doesn't apply if you go to McDonald's and they give you a dodgy cheeseburger and it wrecks only 43% of your body. That doesn't mean you can't sue McDonald's. In other words, they've now created a system in which they want actually to prevent us having a conversation about these things. And that's what I find so weird. People think it's entirely normal that if you put up a Facebook post, Facebook then can take it down because it disagrees with the government narrative.
Imagine for 1 second that taking the vaccine is perfectly voluntary. There's no strings attached and you're not being forced to it. And then imagine that you're allowed to speak freely about it and doctors are allowed to report their patients and you're allowed to talk to your mate and put up photographs. And then imagine that all of these adverse cases are coming forward. How many people would genuinely continue to purchase that product? And what kind of public pressure would there be on governments to stop spending billions of public money on it? That is what this is all about. That's why we can't talk about it. And that's why this crackdown on free speech in general is happening. I mean, there's definitely a wider, vaccine passports is pretty much a test for a new social credit system. China's style of living is coming. Our politicians like the look of how the world is under a credit system, but we've got to really be careful about where this goes because it's nowhere that we want to live.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alexander. And this Chinese social credit thing, it's getting harder and harder. The Chinese virus we could have survived. But essentially, they've imposed Chinese social norms now on most of the Western world. And that's what's really killing us. And that's the after effect. Long after the Omicron and the Delta and all the other rubbish has passed, the Chinese social credit scores are coming to the West. Thank you very much, Alexandra. It's always great to see you. You're the best on what's really underlying these big topics, and we'll see you next week. A few years ago, I wrote a rather gloomy book, as is my wont, about all the things our governments waste their time and money on. And a reader wrote to upbraid me and said, "Lighten up, Steyn, we're rich enough that we can afford to be stupid." Well, we're not so rich now, are we? And yet we appear to be doing even more of the stupid. What's up? There are various straws in the wind. The euro is sinking to parity with the dollar. What does it all mean? Peter Schiff of Euro Pacific Capital joins me. Peter, I've said to you before that it doesn't feel as if there's anything holding us up anymore, and yet somehow it goes on. How long can the post-war 1950 the dollar as global currency? How much longer can it all stagger on for?
Well, I have a feeling not much longer. I mean, the air is already coming out of so many bubbles as we speak, so the dollar bubble can't be far behind. You know, the reason that the euro is weakening against the dollar, of course, the dollar and the euro are all weakening in terms of purchasing power. There's lots of inflation in Europe and the United States, and that problem is going to get much worse. But what's happening now is the Federal Reserve is at least pretending it's going to fight inflation. The ECB is still creating it. They're still in denial or claiming it's transitory. The same thing in Japan. They don't seem to care. But the Fed at least is pretending that it's going to fight it. But that's the key. It's all pretense. The Fed is not going to fight inflation because they can't fight inflation. They're in the business of creating inflation. They're not in the business of stopping it. That's what quantitative easing is. But they're hoping that their tough talk will mean that they won't actually have to do what they're claiming they're going to do. But even if they did it, it's too little too late. Interest rates need to rise above the rate of inflation considerably in order to do anything about it. And if we have 8% inflation in the U.S., and it's really more than twice that if you measured it properly, but we need to have interest rates well over 10%, maybe as high as the 20% that we had in 1980 when Paul Volcker was chairman of the Fed. But the difference is we have so much more debt now. We have a $30 trillion national debt now. We had less than $1 trillion then. America was the world's biggest creditor nation then. We're the biggest debtor nation. We have enormous trade surpluses. Back then trade deficits. Back then we had trade surpluses. America is in much weaker shape economically. We can't afford the type of interest rates that we had in 1980. I mean, we can't even afford 2%, let alone 20%.
No, well, that's the essence of it, isn't it? We have 1970s inflation, but all the norms of the 1970s otherwise have gone. So if you were to, if people were to take it at your word and say we need double-digit interest rates, people would be staggered by that. It would affect not only governments. I mean, the interest rates that would be paid on Chinese debt by America, for example, would be staggering, and also the mortgage rates people paying for their house. Instead, you have a situation. You mentioned the ECB. On the continent, you basically pay for the privilege of sticking your money in a bank. There's no interest rates, and in fact, there's negative interest rates.
Yes, I mean, and why is that? It's because the European Central Bank is printing all this money to buy all these government bonds so that governments don't have to cut spending. So the Europeans are being taxed by inflation. The cost of living is going up because the governments are spending more than they collect in taxes, and they don't want to be honest with the voters. And so they're lying to the voters. They pretend they can get something for nothing, but they're not getting it for nothing. They're paying for it through inflation. Prices are going up instead of their taxes going up. But now we're at a situation where we can't stop the inflation without a substantial increase in interest rates, a contraction of money supply, and that means the entire house of cards that was erected on top of this cheap money has to come crashing down. We've been living in a lie for a generation now, thinking that we can have stuff for free if the Federal Reserve or whatever central bank just creates the money, and everybody can keep borrowing and borrowing, and there's never going to be a day of reckoning. Well, the day of reckoning is fast approaching, and we're going to have to deal with these consequences, and it's going to be horrific.
There's a famous line from Hemingway about how you went broke, first gradually and then suddenly. Do you think this comes to an end gradually, or do you think there's a great big god-awful suddenly ahead for us?
No, it will be sudden when it happens, because I think there will be an aha moment, kind of like the emperor has no clothes, where a lot of people will suddenly realize the predicament that we're in. And of course, they'll realize it en masse, much too late, and then we'll have a collapse. We'll have a collapse in the currency market. We'll see an explosive move up in the price of gold and other commodities. So this is going to be a major financial event that is going to catch everybody by surprise, and it's going to impose horrific losses on large segments of the population. But hopefully in the aftermath of this, we finally do the right thing. We recognize that the problem was caused by government, by central banks, and move towards a freer market. With sound money, we should be back on a international gold standard, the same way we were before the U.S. took the world off the gold standard in 1971. We need a stable monetary system, and governments need to live within their means, and so do individuals. I mean, we can't lever up. I mean, people have to live within their means. They have to save and then spend out of their income. We have to get rid of this whole buy now and pay later mentality, because that's why we're going through this economic crisis that has not even started yet, but it's going to be horrific, as I said, once we have to live through it.
Well, thank you very much, Peter Schiff. You heard what he said there. It's going to be sudden and unexpected, and yes, and yet it was entirely predictable all along. Don't go away. We're coming right back. Stick around.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yasmin Mohammed is the niece of the first president of Egypt, one of the leaders of the revolution that overthrew King Farouk. Say what you like about King Farouk, but I'd take him over Mubarak and Mohamed Morsi and the like any day. Yasmin is my Canadian compatriot, born in Vancouver, but she was denied a conventional Canadian life. Forced into an arranged marriage with an Al-Qaeda operative, and then choosing to flee rather than permit the female genital mutilation of her daughter. Yasmin, it's great to see you. I'd like to ask you something about, you know, all the stuff you've been through with the head coverings and the FGM, as we now call it in Western hospitals. We know it so well. There's so much of it. We all know the acronym. But what seems odd to me is when you look at the Taliban and you look at the way they shove their women in the body bags, and that's one thing. But what's interesting to me is how many people in the Western world are actually on the side and excuse and apologise the shoveling of the women into the body bags here in the UK, the Dominion of Canada, Australia, everywhere else.
Yes, Mark, that is essentially, that's the subtitle of my book, How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam. When I see that happening, it tears my heart, not only for these Muslim women who don't have the ability to fight for themselves, and they're looking to people with power to speak up for them on their behalf, but also it rips my heart when I think of how people in the West are trampling on their own values. They're not standing steadfast in support of their own values that people have died for them to have. These freedoms, freedom of religion, freedom from religion, freedom of, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of everything. And we don't value those things. And we allow, not only do we allow others to trample on those freedoms, but we trample on them ourselves. And it's incredibly disheartening.
Do you get depressed when people like Barack Obama, for example, goes to Egypt and gives a speech and says he will always defend the right of women in the Western world to wear the hijab? Because he must know, surely, that millions and millions of women in the Western world do not go covered by choice.
Absolutely. Barack Obama is a good example of somebody who unfortunately was used as a useful idiot. You brought up Egypt. I mean, he supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Egyptians themselves, luckily, after a huge coup and getting him out, they don't want to be controlled by an Islamist government. They don't want to be controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. People like Obama get the kind of advice, they get advice from Islamists. They get advice from places like Hizb ut-Tahrir and Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist groups that are considered terrorists in the Muslim majority world. And they are the ones that are advising, and Biden as well, and in Canadian government as well. They are the ones who are advising the governments because they come to them and they say, we are the voice of the Muslim people. Well, no, you're not. You are the voice of Islamists. And so it ends up causing such difficulty for the people in the Muslim world who actually do want their freedom, for the women who are actually fighting for feminism, and for the people who are fighting for liberalism and their freedom.
No, you're absolutely right on that. And it would shock, Jinnah, who was the founder of Pakistan, the first Governor General in 1947, and he'd be shocked, like walking around the East End of London, seeing the number of covered women. This is this partnership between the Western left and basically Islamic supremacists is disaster.
Absolutely. It is absolutely disaster. The thing that they have in common is their hate for the West, is their hate for Western values, is their hate for capitalism. So, it is disastrous, and it is something that we need to pay attention to. At the end of the day, they're not aligned. I mean, Islamists want to execute every homosexual. They want to force women in body bags, as you said, truly, and that is happening. In in Afghanistan, they're banning girls from school, banning them from jobs, banning them from being able to travel. The same kinds of things you see in Saudi Arabia and in Iran, forcing women in hijab. Yeah. These themes, you see them in many Muslim majority countries, right? These are not progressive values. So for people on the left to be supporting this is absolutely ludicrous. But like I said, they're doing it. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend in the short term. They're doing it now because they have the aligned, they both agree in their hate for the West.
That's well said, Yasmin. Thank you very much. That is going to do it from us. I have 2 words for you that will wallop your Wednesday right now. Mr. Dan Wootton.
Mark Steyn, great digest tonight, or monologue, the Steyn line. I especially loved you calling out full fact, because I have a huge issue with that organisation, Mark. But coming up tonight, we're going to continue the theme with Matt Letizia, another man, Mark, who has been cancelled because of his views over the vaccine.
Stick it to full fact, Dan. I can't wait to see that. That's all coming up after the weather. Stay safe, stay free.
Hello and welcome to the latest from the Met Office. I'm Aidan McGivern. Drier and clearer for many over the next 24 hours following Wednesday's wet weather. But there will be further showers in the north, and those showers will continue over the next few days across northern parts of the UK because we'll be close to high pressure here. But the more persistent rain that we've seen through England and Wales through the day, well, that clears overnight, and hence clear skies fairly widely across England, Wales, eastern and southern parts of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. But towards the north and the west of Scotland, we keep some showers going, 1 or 2 into the north coast of Northern Ireland, Cumbria, for example, as well. Away from the showers, temperatures dropping to 6 to 8 Celsius, by and large, a cooler, fresher start to Thursday compared to Wednesday, but a brighter start certainly across much of England and Wales, much sunnier conditions compared to Wednesday morning, and a dry day to come for most. But 1 or 2 showers will develop across Wales and the southwest, northern England as well. Most of the showers, however, will continue to affect northern and western Scotland and Northern Ireland. 13 to 14 Celsius here, 17 to 20 for parts of England and Wales, with the sunny spells feeling pleasantly warm. But there will be a bit of a breeze, especially in the north, and that will carry further rain or showers into Scotland, northern England, as well as Northern Ireland during the evening on Thursday. Increasingly, those showers becoming confined, however, by the start of Friday, north of the central belt. Mild start to Friday. In places, it will be 10 to 12 degrees. A bright start in the south. The further north you are, the cloudier it will be, the breezier it will be. But I think, actually, for much of England and Wales, it's a dry day. And for much of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's also fine, but cloudy and breezy. The rain largely affecting northern and western Scotland. And even here, it dries up and brightens up on Saturday and into Sunday. Plenty of warm sunshine developing.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton Tonight.